Welcome to the Natural Genius podcast. We're here to help you tap into your natural genius. Let's go. Jacqui Simpson is a natural genius in leadership development, innovation, fashion, lipstick, and all things people. She is a whiz. It's so many different things. And is really graceful and humble about her impact. I have loved knowing Jack over the years and still remember her on a bus at Mount Hotham wearing some fabulous ski outfit and bright red lips. That's no mean feat. Enjoy our conversation. Here is Jacqui Simpson. The beautiful Jacqui Simpson with the amazing lipstick, the same as when I first met her, with an amazing ski outfit on and bright red lipstick. Welcome to the Natural Genius podcast.
Thank you, Sam. I haven't got the red on today, but I still have it in the drawer.
Oh my goodness, that was, talk about my complete gift and bonus to meet you then. But I remember back to those days and how we seemed to attract other women that were ready to not just sit and drink lattes, but go for it on our skis.
Yeah. One of my favourite memories of those days is actually skiing with you and Kim, and maybe there was one other, and it was our first run of the day, I think, and it was early morning, and we were skiing down a run, kind of all across the run, not one after the other, and we were just kind of whooping and screaming and laughing. And there was sort of a whole lot of guys. I mean, this is how long ago? 20 plus years ago, and it wasn't kind of a thing to see young women really having fun like that and sort of ripping it up. And I just so love, that's one of my memories of when I'm skiing, now I always remember that moment of awesome. And and then people commented when we got down to the bottom, I think, about how we were being a bit loud or something. So
it's always fun to give the guys a bit of a run for their money too. I remember that same ski clinic that we were doing, there was a few of us, maybe three of us, that were in the group that wanted to go for it a bit more. Yeah. And then we ended up by challenging the Steep and Deep crew that were doing a program called the Steep and Deep program at the same time. Yes. And then we raced each other, and the girls won, and it's
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's so awesome. I love those times at Mount Hotham. They were just some of my favourite skiing moments. And I think the first year I did that program with you, and then maybe I did the program on my own the next year. And the next year I had wanted to be in the Steep and Deep group, and had set myself, that was the year I was living on the mountain for a month, because I'd set myself the goal that I would be able to ski double black diamond runs by the end of the month. And I remember skiing my first double black at the end of the first week, and I was like, yes, that's so awesome. So yeah, they were good times.
Oh, Jack, I'm so pleased we've let out with this, because the person I know you to be is both determined and also just great at being able to achieve what you set your mind to.
Yeah, well, I think I've sort of been reflecting on, in the last few years, I've much more consciously chosen to do some things that scare the proverbial out of me, because I don't know, there's something about that does actually make you realize that you're capable of a lot more than you think you are, and it's really confidence building, not just in that domain but in other ways. And I used to, years ago when I was more fit, I used to run, and I found the same with that I always found that really hard, but the running and the mental challenge of it actually made me better at work. So yeah, so that's been my thing, is find something to scare myself and do that.
Does it ever get too scary?
Well, a couple of years ago, my husband and Neil and I were going to Hawaii for a week. And so it's always sort of around holidays, I'm like, okay, what thing could we do that's not like completely touristy, but is something really cool? And because I'm scared of sharks, I had been following this woman, Ocean Ramsey, on Instagram for literally years, because she free dives with like these absolutely huge sharks. And I suddenly, when I was sort of thinking about what could we do that would be like a sort of, signature of that holiday, I was like, oh, I think she's on Oahu, and we're going to Oahu, and I think she takes people out to do these dives with sharks. So yes, I booked the free dive with sharks, and I was so nervous that I wanted to be sick, and then I got seasick, and I was sick as we were traveling out to the ocean. I was just so freaked out and nervous at doing it. But we got in the water, and it was like a meditative experience. It was this thing. We had like 40 sharks swimming around us, and it was really calm, and it was quite a beautiful environment. I didn't feel at all scared once my head was under the water and I could see those sharks. And they prepped us for it. They gave us all of the right guidance about how to do that safely and not act like prey in the water. But it was just an amazing experience.
Oh gosh, Jack, that's such a beautiful lead into the first question I had for you, which is a little bit work related. I'm sort of still catching my breath thinking about sharks because as a surfer, and I know you're a stand-up paddleboarder, which I want to come back to. I just think, again, it's so lovely at the outset of this conversation that the person I know you to be is coming through. So obviously, I'm just going to go desensitized by watching Instagram reels a lot, and then I'm going to find out that the person's where I'm going to go for a holiday, and then I'm going to book in with it. Tell me how in work and life you appear to be peaceful, Jack, and I think it's such a beautiful quality. And it could be that you're the swan with the madly paddling feet underneath and looking serene on top. But how do you feel peaceful in yourself, and how do you retain that for those around you?
Yeah, I don't know if it's peaceful or if it's kind of stoicism, but I guess what I know is that my peace comes from making sure that I've had time in nature, and that I've got things in balance. So that's probably where my peace comes from. I guess in the last few years I've done a lot of kind of self-reflection, and maybe what you're seeing as calmness is in the past has been a bit of a facade of like just everything looks perfect in my life, and I'm a lot less like that these days.
Which part are you a lot less like? I hope you're developing. I hope the peacefulness feels like it's inside and out now.
Oh yeah, well I think I'm more connected to what makes me peaceful and happy and fulfilled in life, but I'm not carrying a kind of facade of like everything in my life is perfect, because it's just not, and life is messy and challenging and has ups and downs and all of those types of things. But I think I'm probably a little bit more true to who I am now than in the 20 or 30 years that you've known me. Yeah.
Welcome to it, Jack. That sounds like such an achievement.
Thank you. Yeah, I think when you're in the craziness of having young children, having a really big job, in a corporate, you've got politics that you're managing, you've got all this stuff going on, you don't always have the space to be reflective. And it's actually been hard won, like in the last few years, post leaving the corporate world, to kind of really explore who I am and those things that make me, but also where they've come from, and understanding that. So it's taken a long time to get there, and it's still a journey.
Oh my gosh, I think so highly of you, Jack. I love hearing those words for you. And I still remember the single Jack. And I remember then when you met your husband Neil
Yeah,
and the children and the beautiful wedding, and it just it just feels really lovely to know people through the years and to see the
yeah,
changes. And I remember when you were at P&O, when I think that's when we first met, and you
yes,
were playing a great strategic people role, and you've gone on to do so many senior roles in the people
mm,
space. And I love that savviness that you've got, the combination of strategy, and we're both similar in this. We can do strategy and tactics. And no wonder you can work in all different size businesses, because you're ready to roll your sleeves up, and you've got that humility as well to just go,
mm,
oh, if we're at a team retreat and the glasses need to be washed, I'm washing the glasses. And I really,
yeah.
I like that. I think that for me, it sort of leads to a life well lived, in that I can jump into all sorts of experiences.
Yeah, totally. It's so funny you say that, because yesterday I think it's the kind of, can be a blessing and a curse. That's that sort of willingness to, like, oh, the dishwasher needs to be unpacked. Oh, that bench needs a wipe. Oh, that person needs something. Because I totally back myself to work anything out. Like, that is something I've learned over the years, that I'm really good at assimilating information at a generalist level. Obviously, not I can't be an engineer and go and design something engineering wise, but at a generalist level, most things are pretty easy to work out in my mind.
Mm.
And so that means that sometimes I'm really stretched quite thin
Mm.
across a whole range of things, because I'm like, yeah, I can do that. Yeah, let me sort that out for you. And that's a bit of a curse, as well as, yeah, it's good to be like that in my mind, but it can be a curse as well.
Mm. Yes, yeah. Yeah. How do you manage that, Jack? Any tips?
I think in an organizational setting, I think it's really about being clear on the important things, that, you can still do all those other things if you can fit them in, but it's kind of staying focused around what's the most valuable things that you can do right in
Mm.
this moment, or in this period for the business, and making sure that they have enough space. That's that old, like, big rocks and little rocks thing. And,
Mm.
everyone's heard that analogy over the years, but just being really clear on those two or three big rocks,
Mm.
and more so in a small business where, to have a few special projects on the go amongst actually getting the work done that brings revenue in the door can really stretch you quite thin, and you have to strip it right back to, like, what you can actually do and have bandwidth for, rather than trying to do everything. I mean, as a small business, we know there's things that we need to get done, but we can't do them all at once. We just have to work on, like, one at a time, and
Mm.
nail that thing, and then move on to the next. So,
Mm.
yeah, I guess that's the way to manage it, and that's kind of what's worked for me. I find sitting back and reflecting, if I'm feeling a little bit like I'm stretched all over a million things, and some of those little rocks become like, they can be low value items but helpful for people.
Mhm.
But if I start feeling a bit like, it's out of balance, then I know that's a moment for me to sit back and just rethink what is of most value right now for the business, or for me if it's in my personal life, and just reset those expectations.
Yeah, reset the to-do list and reset the expectations. And tell me,
Yeah.
Jack, is it an intuitive thing that you can sense into, or have you got an internal criteria around the business, like what's important?
It's a bit of both. So I think, I mean, you don't kind of get to be, 30 years into your career in business and not understand the fundamentals of, the financials of the business, the things that actually are important to keep that business flowing, to keep the team happy and productive and set up for success. There's all of those pieces, but there is an intuitive element for me as well. Some of that is probably more focused around the people side. I have a very finely tuned antenna for when there's some emotion in the room that's not quite right, that isn't kind of aligned to, what's needed, or if someone's upset or angry or just, misaligned in some way. And that has come from my childhood. So that's has come from a different place. But it's, it's come from probably some negative experiences, but actually it's kind of given me this fine tuning around it that I'm almost too in touch with like how everyone's feeling in the room. They don't have to tell me. I know how things are going. So there's that element of intuition, but there is also a structure too. Like there's fundamentals in business that you have to have in place and make sure that they're tracking in the right direction. So so keeping in touch with all of that as well.
Yeah, it's great, Jack. I'm pleased to ask you that question because I think that as much as you've had things that shape you, especially as you mentioned your childhood, I think it's a fun time to be in society now, because things like ADHD or attention deficit disorder, or which I really don't think disorder is the word for it, or empaths, or I feel like this kind of the spiritual and intuitive skills that we have, they may have come from somewhere. And I think we're also going to get more into strategy has done a lot with instinct and intuition. And some might say spirit comes in, some might say there's an extra force that comes in. I know that for me, I've always had, like I can remember being a really young, early 20s and doing some strategic business stuff and kind of being like, well, this is what you do. And this gorgeous first boss of mine with his handlebar mustache just going, yeah, what do you think, Sam? I was so young, straight out of uni. I sometimes now I reflect on that and business plans that I've done, and with some entrepreneurs, I've been able to ask the right questions, and they've been like, you're right, my distribution or my sales or something, it's not sorted. And you and I are really lucky that we've been able to be in different businesses so that we can see those levers and we can see, hang on, distribution isn't sorted, and even that we've worked in around stakeholder management or change or that sort of aspect. I think sometimes that could have, when I was working at Deloitte, sometimes it was a bit of an add-on. So they'd get all their consulting stuff in the proposal and then they'd be like, oh, we should add some change management.
Yeah.
And I saw, having moved into change, that so much of that was going, how, if we need to get this senior leader on board to lead this change or lead this part of a change, or this new technology is going to come in and we need him to be on board to sell it to his people, it's Bob that he goes to breakfast with or lunch with once a week.
Yeah.
And so we're going to go and meet with Bob, or or even like we used to look at vision and the strategy behind what we were looking to do, and we'd be like, that's not strong enough for us to be able to sell it. And so we'd get the leadership team back in and we'd be like, okay, fellas, we need to work on refining the vision a little bit more from a change point of view. But we had this sort of back door to be able to improve the business.
Yeah.
And I think, similarly, you've been lucky enough to have those many different aspects of business, even the recent study that you did, to be able to get, and your curiosity like I've got around new technology, like you just jump in and have a bit of a mess around and then just see how it works and work out your systems with it.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot of people and culture people do have this opportunity sort of, it is that kind of like from the side to influence and to understand. And yeah, it is a bit of, I mean, I was always envious of the, people like you, Sam, that are coming from with the really slick consulting decks. And, I was always like, how do I get good at creating like a McKinsey deck? They just do PowerPoint like so well. And, they had all the right words, but there is an element of kind of instinct. And I remember my first HR manager's role when I must have been about 26, so a long time ago now. And one of my colleagues, another HR manager in another division, said to me, "Oh, you're awesome, Jacqui. You just shoot from the hip, and it's always spot on." And I don't know where that comes from. I think it's a combination of life experience, but I didn't have much then. It's like a bit of cockiness. It's a little bit of intelligence. It's a whole range of things that now I see as like I'm actually able to assimilate a lot of information quite quickly and see the big picture. Detail takes me a bit more time, but big picture, I can see that pretty quickly. And it's often gives people the vision and the confidence to sort of move forward. So
yeah, dare I ask, Jack, when you're using AI agents like GPT or others, do you this could sound cocky, I'm glad that you just used that word. Every now and then, well, actually, no, increasingly at the moment, I'm finding that the questions that I ask are different to what GPT is going to come up with. Like from the start, GPT has always impressed me that it's got a lot of nuance and connections that sometimes I wouldn't have come up with. And I joked to friends years ago in a kind of self-effacing way that I got it to create some operations plan and business plans for me, and I'd missed 3 sections of a business plan. And a business plan can be massive, Jack, can't it? And so I need to give myself a break. But I was having a giggle going, it made it so much better. And it was lovely to sort of have those checks in place. What I'm finding at the moment, especially because we're in this backdrop of so many people, especially very advanced, the top AI people that I follow on X and the work that they're doing as devs, that they're talking so highly about superintelligence. And also I feel like the questions that I'm asking of my clients still, I don't always get them through GPT. And I feel like that's the human differentiator, and I'm proud of that. I think that there's so much fear around this, but I really do think that don't know where it comes from. This question needs to be asked. Is a real delight for you and I. It's a real, I think GPT and others are a great partner to that. And then I still see the importance of human in the loop, as we call it.
100%. I do use GPT, and I find it great for getting a start on things, but if you're not careful, it's very alluring. Like when you read the words, you're like, oh yes, they've totally nailed it. They've said exactly what I want to say, and I can't improve on that. But actually, you have to read it 2 or 3 times and really think about what it is saying, because often it's like word salad. It's it's actually, it sounds like all the good words, but really you don't need those words. So I think that human piece, and like your example that you missed out 2 sections of the business plan, probably they weren't as high priority for that business, and that's why you didn't focus on them, and that's completely reasonable. So that this sort of human overlay is so important. I think as we get better at interrogating and using things like ChatGPT and get better at the prompt management and so on, you can get more and better things out of it. But it so needs that human engagement and I guess discernment about what is needed in that particular moment, or for that client or project, what have you.
I often refer in the intuition or sort of not knowing where something comes from. In that space, I refer to Elizabeth Gilbert, the writer who became so famous with Eat, Pray, Love. She's done a couple of TED Talks, and her first one, she talks about a poet that had to run through the prairie to get back to the house to get pen and paper or pencil and pad or something to be able to write the poem down, because otherwise spirit would flow through her and into the next person. And she talks also about how our generation at the moment, or our society at the moment, is much more me focused. Like, I created this business plan, or I created this business. And she, or poem or whatever, and she's like, years gone by, it was spirit came through me and I'm the conduit. And I think it's a bit of both in my world. I feel like there is this unknowing as to where it's come from with some things, and how blessed you and I are to be able to harness that and to be able to build great businesses and trust it. I think the more experience I get, Jack, I wonder if you're the same, the more I get to trust that and hear it more and turn up the volume a bit more because I'm listening more.
Yeah, I think so. I've so many times I've had conversations in a business context, which with someone who's very logic brained about, might have been something about people and a people strategy, and they're like, but the logical way to do it is this. And I'm like, you're talking about people. The logic isn't as important as the emotion, And so while something might be logical, it doesn't always flow that is going to be the most effective solution in that moment or for that person. It's kind of taking both of those things into account, and having a sense of what is going to work, and that comes, I don't know where that comes from.
If something in this conversation lit you up, there's a signal in that. If you want help tuning your own signal into a clear next move, start with a 3-minute signal check-in at naturalgenius.com.au. And if you want focused support, book a signal lab and we'll work through it together. Now back to the Natural Genius. No, and tell me, Jack, if you go back into that moment that you were just talking about with different people that were quite rational, what were your other things in the toolkit? What did you hear often and that you had to sort of smooth? I feel like you would have been such a great business partner to be able to help operations and other leaders to be able to do their people work well.
I think, well, let me just say that sort of, and this is, the benefit of hindsight, so I don't know if I was as effective at the time, but leadership is really hard. When you are leading a team, and HR people often are only leading small teams, like I was fortunate to lead people in different countries and things, but HR people typically have only led small teams, so they don't have necessarily the lived experience of how difficult leadership and bringing people together and moving in the same direction and keeping everyone engaged and working as a team and all those things, that is bloody hard. And I just think that we underestimate how difficult that is for leaders. And I think just having some compassion for the fact that it's hard and that they might not have got things quite right, a conversation might not have gone the way it should have, it might have not have gone as textbook as it should have, all those things, you've got to have a lot of compassion, because it is hard to be a good leader. It's easy when you've got people in the team that are like you, but if you really want to get the best out of a diverse team, leadership is challenging and you've got to work really hard at it. And in lots of environments today, and we've got the same in our business, you've got people who are on the tools and are doing engineering and are leaders. And it's really hard for them to find the time even just to have conversations with people, to make sure that everyone's doing, what they need to do and have all the tools they need to succeed and all those things. Just even finding the time is challenging. So I think just, I guess the biggest tool in my toolkit was being supportive. And I always had the approach that my job was to help a manager navigate through the system, navigate through the policy, navigate through the laws of the land around how they were managing a situation, rather than telling them what they've done wrong or enforcing the policy. You know what I mean? It's kind of like
telling them what they've done wrong. Oh gosh, how tough.
It's sort of like there's just finding the way through. That's all. It's all about moving forward, finding those ways through, and getting to the other side of it in a place where everyone's satisfied with an outcome. Can't always do that. Lots of experiences of people being unhappy, but being a partner and supporting someone through it and working alongside them through it is really important.
That's so gorgeous. I think the thing that's also coming to me in this conversation, Jack, is maybe Sydney was a real great fit for you, because having been brought up in Melbourne, if I'm correctly remembering that, and then moving to Sydney, I think that your savviness and also your ability to be able to work with diverse teams internationally, probably Sydney would have been a great next step for you from being in Melbourne. I don't of course you can do international stuff from Melbourne, but I just feel like sometimes Sydney, in my experience, was a bit more of a wheeling and dealing kind of city. And it's changed now, I dare say, because of us working so much virtually. But I wonder if you can help me understand a bit more about the difference between working in Melbourne, Sydney, now New Zealand for many years, and even working internationally or even studying internationally. Nuances or cultural differences have you noticed, or what works well?
I think Melbourne, and look, my time in Melbourne, living and working in Melbourne, was now a long time ago. It was over 20 years, maybe 25 years. And similarly, my time working in Sydney was 20 years ago, so 20 years or more. So things may have changed, but I think Melbourne has a little bit more, perhaps a sort of respect for history and a little bit more classical, colonial sort of environment, and the whole cafe scene and lifestyle there is I don't know, a little bit more formal. Whereas Sydney is the party girl. Like, that is my impression of living in the two cities, that Sydney's always on. And it's a really exciting place to be when you're young and kind of in the early stages of your career. So then I moved to Auckland, and Auckland felt, at the time, now 20 years ago, it felt like it reminded me of Melbourne of my childhood. So, kids, my kids went to school in bare feet, not because they didn't have shoes, but because they could, and they didn't want to put shoes on even through winter. So, and all these things that are very relaxed in New Zealand, things have evolved since, but at the time I was shocked at how lax the safety sort of expectations were in organisations compared to Australia, and especially coming from
Jack.
What's that?
I said, how interesting.
Yeah, just like things were. I rocked up to a bank, and it was so easy to open a bank account. It's changed now, but it was just so easy to get things done that, and it was, everyone was relaxed about it. So those things were great and made it easy to assimilate into Auckland, but also New Zealand is a very different culture to Australia, and Australians underestimate that when they move here. And there's a lot of learning you have to do to work with that sort of culture where people aren't as front-footed around their opinions. So they may not tell you what they think. They might judge you for it. They might not accept what you're saying, but they may not necessarily tell you that. So that was a bit of a sort of, from an organisational perspective, a bit of a shock to have to work with that environment where people aren't so willing to tell you what they think, and also recoil a little bit if you're too forward in your opinions. So yeah, so that's required a lot of winding back of how I approach the world.
Oh gosh, I think this is so fascinating. I've loved working with different cultures and different teams.
Yeah.
I remember hearing a story about an Aussie going to work in New York and having to return something, like getting something for an event and then having to return it to a store. And over time, with each of those moments of having to return things, getting more and more aggressive to make sure that the return happened in America. I just don't, in New York, sorry, specifically. And it sounded like the policy is really, really different. And then they came back to Australia and they turned up to Target to return something, and they were ready, like all guns blazing, to like, you must give me the, and they were like, sure, like, here you go, here's your return. And I remember them talking about having to wind back the New Yorker after years of living there. And I just think that that's such a lovely thing to learn. And I always talk so highly about having worked with an Indian and Sri Lankan team years ago and feeling like a member of the family. And it just, we're so lucky to be able to have those different experiences, Jack.
Yeah, completely. I loved, so I used to be responsible for the Asia Pacific region in one of my roles, and that included India and China. And I loved going to India, and I loved the team there. And they have an affiliation with each other that is quite different and stronger in some ways than work teams in New Zealand or Australia. And also they really know how to party. So their conferences, oh my, once the day program was over, the dancing and the partying was next level. So that was always so much fun to do. So yeah, I think just working in different cultures is such a great, it's just so great for your understanding and appreciation of the world and how people interact. And not everyone interacts the same, and that's okay. And there's, it's so great.
Oh, speaking of great, Jack, I just love your story before about the shark and the knowing that you've become really, you've got a lot of experience with stand-up paddleboarding. What do you love about it, and how have you become such an expert on something when you are scared of sharks? Because I dare say some of the places that you go around New Zealand, you'd be assuming that there may be sharks somewhere.
Yeah, I think I've only really seen one shark when I've been paddleboarding. You'd be surprised how little sea life you see when you are paddling, actually, which is, from a planetary perspective, it's a bit of a worry. I'd really like to see a lot more sea life. I wouldn't call myself an expert on paddling, but many years ago, when our kids were little, maybe only like 2 and 6 or something like that, my husband said to me, we should get a stand-up paddleboard. We were watching this guy sup surfing up north while we were camping, and I'm like, why would I want a paddleboard? Like, who's going to carry that to the car? That seems like way too much trouble. I was like, no way, like, this is not happening. And then a couple of years after that, I was like, I think we should get a paddleboard. And so we got our first paddleboard, which was like this foam like raft basically, and took that out, and the whole family had a go, but I was the only one who really stuck with it and came back from holidays and then found other people that I could go and paddle with. Yeah. And that's when I realized that I had this kind of fear of sharks and also like orcas and stuff, that I'd be paddling, and especially if I was paddling on my own, my mind would be like just constantly sort of cogitating on this, like, what if a shark came up or an orc came up and not nudged my board? What would I do? And that was so like the thing that made me realize that I had this kind of thing going on that I needed to sort out, which was this kind of fear of
Needed
sharks.
to sort out.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
Jack, well
yeah,
played.
but the paddling for me, I like paddling with other people. Not everyone does. It's because it's a solo sport, but I really like paddling with other people because then there's this whole connection piece. And I was just really lucky at the time that I started to get more seriously into paddling that there was some amazing women who were running little groups in Auckland, and I was able to kind of go and paddle at sunrise before work. And yeah, they was really great times. Things have changed a little bit in paddling since then, but just having it as a weekly thing that is kind of like going to the gym, but it's not the gym. It's out in the on the ocean. It's like going skiing, it's just, it gets you out there in nature, doing something that is challenging. The conditions every single day that you paddle, the same as skiing, every single day, the weather and the conditions are different. So you're constantly in this state of adjusting for that. And I'm still learning. So I've still got a long way to go, but I know that I've stuck with paddling for many, many years now, and I just know that it's something that'll be with me for a long time because it's such an accessible sport. We have people, up to their 80s who get on stand-up paddle boards, and we have young children on stand-up paddle boards. So you've kind of got this sport that once you know how to do it, you can get yourself out on the ocean at any time. And yeah, last year I decided to kind of push the dial a little bit further with a friend, and had seen this amazing ultra distance paddle in Thailand advertised on Instagram, and I jokingly sent it to her and said, we should do this. And she came back and went, yeah, I want to. And I laughed, and she's like, no, I'm serious. We need to do this. And I'm like, oh my God, are we going to do this? And so we signed ourselves up, and then immediately felt like quite ill about the thought that we had to train for it. And then spent all winter,
I love those words, Jack. I immediately felt quite ill.
And we spent sort of the first half of winter like saying, we really need to start training, we really need to start training, we really need to start training. And then the 3 months in the lead up, we were just quite intensively training, and we're literally out with headlamps on because we had to get distance up before work and things. We were out like paddling at 4:30 in the morning. And that is a whole different ball game when it's pitch black and it's quiet on the water, but there's things happening, there's the water's moving and there's things around you, but it's a whole different ball game. So that was just an amazing experience, and I've actually already signed up to do it again this year, because the first time you're kind of a bit anxious about the whole thing and whether you'll make it, and the next time you get to enjoy it. So this time I'm looking forward to doing it again.
When about is that in the year?
It's at the start of December.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's just after cyclone season in Thailand. And foolishly, we both went thinking, oh, the water's just going to be like glass. It's going to be flat. It won't be a big deal. We paddled in a lot more difficult conditions than, we expected. And then actually it was not flat at all. Actually, in the total 130 kilometres of paddling over the 5 days, we probably had maybe 10 or 15 kilometres of flat water, and the rest was in side chop, headwind, massive headwinds, breaking waves. It was rough as. So so it was challenging, but it was awesome. We loved it.
Oh, amazing, Jack. So I think sometimes you can be more courageous than you realise. So you just get more and more used to, like the Jack that was on that Hossam bus with fabulous red lips. If you think back to that person, she's been constantly courageous.
Yeah.
And you say like 20 years or more later.
Yeah, I think that's right. That, that is the reason why, you need to constantly push yourself out of your comfort zone. And we, in our, the leadership programs that I've been involved in creating and, so, helping to design and deliver over the years, that is one of the things. Actually, I want to jump back for a moment, because one of the people where we first met Sam was not skiing. It was at a leadership course run by Fabian Datner. And
Oh my God, with the fabulous name. Remember what the name was?
Up the Ladder in a Skirt. Yes.
You've got such a good memory. I'm so sorry to not remember the initial meeting.
Yeah, and that course and Fabian and her style and her beliefs about leadership actually were the foundation for everything that I've done since, in terms of designing leadership programs. And, her number one thing was leader know thyself. And that is so important. So, yeah, so I digress a bit onto that, but I lost my train of thought now. But Fabian Datner was
courage. I think we were talking about.
Yeah, that just having that courage. So, continually building and understanding your comfort zone and where you're, stepping out of that into your stretch, into stretch. And then, in leadership programs, we always talked about, you've got your comfort zone and you don't learn anything in your comfort zone. You only learn when you're stretched. And the stretch has got to be appropriate, because if you go too far, then you're kind of in a panic zone. You're not learning there either. So it's kind of finding that space that is where you're right on the edge of stretch. You're, feeling, you can feel it, that this is hard. And
taking it even that next step beyond that, Jack, when you're in the dark on your stand-up board with a headlamp. I am in awe. That is so cool.
Yeah, I've had these conversations with a very good friend of mine who's a leadership development facilitator about when we've been on edge of stretch. So we always talk about, were you on the edge of stretch? And I'm like, I was totally on the edge of stretch in that moment. So it's a funny thing, you're 100% that you do, your tolerance for things and your understanding of what you are capable of, what your mind is capable of, and what your body is capable of grows over your life. Even having children for me was something I was like, oh wow, like the human body is an amazing thing. Like if it can do that, it can do anything. So it's so true that you kind of build and build and build. And sometimes when you're in an organizational setting and you're an experienced manager, you forget that that's what's going, that people who are at the start of their career, they don't have all that to draw on. So it's no wonder they're not operating in exactly the way you are. It takes time and, experience to kind of get to that point. So, yeah.
Oh, that's a beautiful way of saying it, Jack. There's a couple of moments that come to mind as you were talking about that stretch and the stand-up paddleboard experience. When I first started surfing, I was lucky enough to do group lessons down at Torquay on the Great Ocean Road, and met a couple of guys, and we were in the same group, and we were like, we're the same level, let's catch up and let's go surfing regularly, or whenever you're going surfing, let the others know. And that was a great introduction, because I'd been up in Bali and then I'd learnt up there, and then I'd come back to Australia kind of going, what do I do next? Anyway, so these group lessons worked well, and then got my own board, and then started to go out with these fellas. And then I was walking with friends along Point Addis Beach, again on the Great Ocean Road, and bumped into this gorgeous girl, Nicole, who I had known through my favourite coffee shop in Melbourne. And her and my other friend I was with, we were all like, oh yeah, we're beginner surfers, we should go out. Fast forward, every Wednesday I would drive down from Burke Street in the centre of Melbourne well before dawn, and I'd be heading down the Geelong Road in the dark. Wow. And I'd get to Point Addis and the two of us would be like giggly school kids catching up every Wednesday, and it'd be 7 something maybe. And then we'd be popping our wetsuits on, whether it was winter or summer, and we'd be climbing down those stairs at Point Addis and going out for a surf for an hour or so. We'd come back every now and then because my friend I'd met through a coffee shop, she'd have this fabulous coffee that she'd brought for us to have after our session. Sometimes when it was winter, I wouldn't be able to, I'd just be able to open my car door because my fingers were cold.
I love it.
And I jokingly say these days when I've had these high experiences in life, either you want to be right around me because I'm so high on life, I'm like this excitable little puppy, or you don't. Like if you're not ready for that energy. But every Wednesday I would be back at the desk at 11 a.m.-ish, and I'd have gone, sometimes we'd go and get a coffee before I headed back to Melbourne. But that was like a 3-hour round trip driving. And it was like, again, we've talked about this with skiing as well, doing weekend trips and like big effort to go after work on a Friday sometimes and back on a Sunday, and you've driven 10 hours or 8 hours in that weekend, and you come back on a Monday and you're like, whoa, I'm ready. And everyone's like, what did you just do? Like you worked out for 2 days and drove and it probably slept in a different bed to your own and all that sort of stuff, like in terms of being in a different place. And you're this hyped and this energized. And it is just such a, nature can be so energizing, and being with friends can be so energizing, and pushing yourself. And also there's so few injuries, just very, very few injuries. So driving up there with the risk that could happen, it's still, some of that sort of stuff just amazes me that we can push. Actually, the other story that came to mind, Jack, a quick one, was I remember when I was doing a lot of yoga, and sometimes I would do something I really didn't expect my body could do. And like probably the biggest I could do one time is like, I think it was a headstand or a handstand or something, and then into crocodile. So you're kind of going down into like a sort of lower push-up kind of thing. And I remember that day being so good, because it was like, oh my gosh, if I could do that with my body, which I never ever expected I could do, the day ahead became so magical.
So easy. Yeah, I absolutely can relate to that. And my favorite time of day is paddling at sunrise, because I don't know, there is something magical about being on the water as the sun comes up over the horizon, and it sets me up so well for the rest of the day that it's just so worth it to get up early, to be there before dark so that you're on the water as the sun comes up. It's just incredible. And you've probably had that with surfing as well, that you're out, and something special about that time of day.
Oh gosh. And maybe you and I are similar in that with skiing I always want to get better, but in surfing I don't care. So or actually no, you're doing competitions with SUP, so it might be but it's funny sometimes.
I'm always liking to it. I always want to improve. I'm a technical player.
Technical player. Hey, I'm mindful of time, Jack, but I want to ask you before we go about the boys, about having raised men. Like any tips, because I'm sure you've done such a great job with those beautiful boys, young men.
Yeah, so we currently have a 15-year-old and a 19-year-old, and the 15 to 16 age bracket, no one prepares you for. Everyone gives you the parenting advice around having young children, but no one really talks about how challenging it is to parent teens. That age for like having boys, I can only talk about boys, but that age is really, really challenging to manage. So everything that we say is wrong, don't really want to engage, so getting them out of bed is hard. In this age of computers and things, getting them off a computer is hard. Everything is sort of like a battle of wills. And the one tip I can give is that because we have a 19-year-old, I know that after they get through that, they come back to you and then they're awesome. And, the conversations resume, and the, special moments resume. So it's just having faith through those couple of years that is really important, because then they come back to you, and you know, having that relationship intact is
so pleased you're a mother. Oh God, sorry to interrupt. It makes my heart sing to hear you say those things.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's so cool to have conversations with, I mean, my 19-year-old. We have a Friday nights, we do homemade pizzas, and we all make them together. And then the 15-year-old goes back to his room. So he's kind of still in that mode. But my 19-year-old boy and his girlfriend, and my husband and I, we sit and just talk about a whole range of random things: music, careers. Last week it was about cars, because I'm getting a new car, and it was about all the sorts of cars that I could have. And it was a really great opportunity, because I was talking about I wanted a Honda Civic Type R or a WRX or something racy. And then the conversation kind of went on to like, you know, the sort of people that have those cars, and like I could go to drag races, and I'm like, they are not my people. I'm not a drag racing. I'm just like an active
You could
person.
be if you wanted to be, Jack.
I could if I wanted to, because I like a fast car, but it's just not my thing to hang out there, because I like to be in bed early so I can get up early to go pedaling.
You'd come up with a great outfit too.
And we had to explore like what a Honda Civic Type R would look like with roof racks and a paddleboard on. And we got to the point where I was like, no, actually, that's not the right car for me. So we have these really fun conversations of just kind of exploring the funny ideas, and it's just so awesome to do that with young people.
I love that. And I love the surprise of where the conversations go, and seeing them. It's the surprise of sometimes seeing the maturity and thinking, wow, you are your own person. This is really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is really special, but also they're a mirror. So they're a mirror on you. So my oldest boy is like much more like me than he is like Neil, and my youngest boy is more like Neil than me. And so Oscar's like a mirror, and I get opportunities to think about how I am in the world by seeing how he is in the world. And so I'm learning, you know, continuing to learn from that too. And that's kind of a cool thing to have.
Oh, Jack, you and I could keep talking forever, but I really want to be respectful of your time. That's been the most lovely. There's just such sweetness that I get through these podcast episodes of that my dear friends and people in my network, I get to really present aspects of them. I'm so amazed that the character can't like the sweetness or some real dimensions of the people that I know can come through in such a short amount of time. I think, Jack, that's been so wonderful.
Oh, thanks, Sam. I think it's also a credit to you, because you do have this like, you know, pumped for life and curiosity for people, and I love that. It's such a gift to be able to talk to you. So thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Natural Genius podcast. Please share this with anyone who came to mind, and visit us at naturalgenius.com.au. Thanks so much.